Santa Claus had a beard. They was laughing the whole talk, Shaikh. It's a palm. It was.
Finish button.
Stop. They said, Shaikh, you funny like that. I said, what? They said, man, you had a beard and a Santa Claus hat. I said, what? They said, yeah, you know, you can get the thing.
Most of the Moroccan.
Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. نؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم أما بعد. After praising Allah, the Almighty, the most merciful, the most kind, the most generous, the one whom His mercy He has made it wider and more usable from Him than His punishment and His anger. We praise Him, we thank Him, we worship Him, we seek His assistance, we seek refuge in Allah from the evil within ourselves and from the bad consequences of all of our deeds. Whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, not can lead them astray. Whomsoever Allah leaves to be astray out of His knowledge and wisdom and justice, then none can guide him right after that. I bear witness there is no deity, there is no one that should be worshipped in truth other than Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, the Most High, the Sublime. He is in a class by Himself, unique, alone, without any associates, any partners. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah from Bani Hashim of the Quraysh of the people of Mecca as the last prophet and messenger to humanity. I ask Allah to bless this gathering and to guide my heart and tongue and to make it beneficial and easy. Ameen. As I told the brother, I didn't have much sleep last night, so I'm a little bit goofy. So, today's talk is complimentary to yesterday or last night's seminar, which was dealing with burnout, depression, and then we must add that Sheikh Hanif Davis added anxiety and then suicide. And some people, when they talk about the issue, they only mention the burnout, the depression, and suicide, but you often hear still in the case that they're talking about, or the caseload, or the case management.
Alert. Select a wireless network.
There is some obvious anxiety going on.
Cancel. Button.
So I didn't mention it
Comment section.
in the
Finish button.
and the title, and I didn't mention in my talk, but Hanifi did, as he worked in mental health like myself, and he's a bit more extensive, so he felt that that should be added. And so today, when we say complimentary, then we're talking about, like some of our capital, relationships, and that's pretty broad for starters. Relationships, because you have relationships, when you think about it, people normally think about husband and wife or couples. And we say couples because this is not just an Islamic thing, this is a human thing. So some people have relationships, but they're not married, but they're couples. Then you have married couples. Allah musta'an. Wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Now we have to mention all of this, which is reality, but filth, bisexual, and lesbians, and Allah musta'an. And then you talk about relationships between parents and children and parents. Then you have relationship between siblings. You have relationships between neighbors. You have relationships between co-workers. You have relationships between those who are pupils in school. Some people in elementary, some high school, we skip junior high. Some people in college. Some people did grad and people doing undergrad and post and PhD and all of this. So there are relationships within all of that. And we talk about that which is most significant to our belief, that which is tied to Allah Ta'ala, His book, His angels, His messengers, the day of judgment, the good and the bad of the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa jannati na'im wa nar jahim, and that which is connected to the Jannah and the hellfire is the relationship between brothers and sisters in Islam. So you can see it's quite broad, but we want to try to just talk about a little bit in different directions. And of course, the main thing for us is relationships as it relates to spouses, because it's terrible. When you talk about the statistics, when you talk about the data, when you talk about the material, when you talk about the painstaking relationships, the divorce, the hostilities, the hatred, the division, the divorce, the mental agony that everybody goes through, and then the world is looking. And then you have that second and third, if we can say a second and third generation of Muslims that said, I don't want to have a damn thing to do with marriage. And they're on the brink of saying, I don't want to have a damn thing to do with Islam. So relationships have to be talked about. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His mercy. Ameen. When you talk about as human beings, then the first thing we want to remind ourselves is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us honored. Allah has made us honored. There are three creation only that Allah chose to create that has what's called aql. Aql meaning intellect, the discernment or the ability to determine or to recognize that which is between right and wrong, good and bad, safe and hazard or danger. And that is the first from amongst them is the angels. And this is the order that Allah created them, by the way, the angels. They are with aql, they are with intellect, they are with qulub, hearts. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala said, La ya'sun Allah ma amarahum wa yaf'aluna ma yu'marun. Now, that they don't disobey Allah. So you see the first aspect for the angels of intellect. Discern between what's right and what's wrong. What's good, what's bad, what's safe, what's dangerous. You don't disobey Allah. How good is that? How safe is that? How right is that? They don't disobey Allah. But they, in other words, rather what they do is obey Allah and what He commanded them. That's the angels. They're the first creation that Allah created. They have intellect. Then you will have the second, and this is in order again, the jinn. The jinn. And they are a real creation, by the way. Although many groups from amongst the Muslims, Allah musta'an, they deny this creation. Rather, they say jinn is just a fiery disposition in man. When you get mad, you get angry, you lose your cool, when you get pissed off, they say that's the jinn. Allah musta'an. Some of them, they said, and the jinn is just, like some type of theory. It really doesn't exist. And they have all kind of things, but Allah has created the creation called the jinn. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, وَمَا خَلَقَتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And I have only created, or I have not created jinn and mankind except for the purpose of worship. So again, you have to have intellect. Al-ibadah tahtaj al-aql. Worship, obeying Allah, doing what He said, doing what He loves, avoiding what He told you to avoid, making repentance when you fall short. It takes intellect. And that's what Prophet he said, Rufa Aklam and thalatha, that the pen is lifted from 3 people, meaning it don't write the thing that's blameworthy in normal circumstances. From amongst them, the one who is either permanently or temporarily insane. Right? So the intellect, the akal, again, which gives you the ability to discern between what's right from what's wrong, what's good from what's bad, what's safe from what's dangerous. Then the jinn, they are the second. And then the last but not least, وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Naam, Allah said that indeed we have honored the human being. Allahu Akbar. And one of the ways Allah honored us, He gave us aql. Created us with that same thing that the angels and the jinn have, the ability to discern between what's right from what's wrong, what's good from what's bad, what's safe from what is dangerous. Now, so this, when we talk about relationships, know that Allah has given us those things that it takes to be in relationships, to be interactive. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made that the way that the world goes round. Nothing moves, rotates, plays out, happens except in this life there's some type of relationship. And the relationship that Allah tabarak wa ta'ala made everything come from, we know is the relationship between our father Adam and his wife, Adam wa Hawa. Although some people deny that too. They said Adam and Eve were not really real figures. They were mythical and all of this kind of stuff. But we know Allah's word is true, and this is the beginning of relationships. When we talk about the issue of relationships, one of the things, what's that?
Feedback.
Is that mic?
I think it's
Yeah, switch.
no.
Okay, yeah, something like here. Also, before I finish the next point, the women said that their speaker is up very high, so that whenever we talk or make some type of vocal noise, it's like almost overbearing, like somebody screaming, because their volume, their speakers are pretty loud. So I don't know if they have a separate for that or not. I try to turn my volume down and move the mic down so that it's not close to my mouth, but I was asked to mention that. So, when we talk about relationships, we must understand that, and this is no slight to women, because the feminist movement, Allah musta'an, the kuffar wal munafiqeen, believers and the hypocrites, and now unfortunately the awam, the everyday Muslim, they feel anytime you talk in a way where there is not total equality between the male and female species, then this is slighting the woman. This is an attack on the women, insult on the woman. No. But what we must understand when we talk about relationships, for starters, is that Allah Azza wa Jal made us different. And we don't have to put a lot of evidence for that from the Quran. Allah mentioned this in many ways. One of them, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلَ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلَ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And Allah said, and likewise they have similar rights to men. وَلَهُنَّ. Now, this means for the women. Hunna means them, women. Allah said they have similar rights to men. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He also mentioned, Yani Nisa harthukum fatu harthukum anna shittum. Women are a tilt for you. So go to your tilt as you please. And this requires explanation when we talk about this ayah. But the ulama, they said tilt here means the vagina of the lady, the womb, where you impregnate, where you lay your seed as a man. Although some people try to take that ayah general, and they include other forms of sex such as anal. And the Prophet ﷺ, he cursed the one who has anal sex with their spouse. So this ayah shows you that there's a difference between men and women, because Allah said, go to your tilth, telling the men to go to their women, to what we call procreate, and this is a prerequisite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, some scholars said in the ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah, when Allah tabarak wa ta'ala said, وَقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُمْ, and then قَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُمْ, some scholars said this means do something nice for the woman. Some said foreplay. Don't just, jump on top of her and take care of your business, Rub her, do something nice, give her a gift, give her a massage, say some kind words. All of this shows you that the man is different from the woman and the woman is different from the man. You also have Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala talking about the haid, the menses of the lady. Just think if Allah made them like us, they have no monthly cycle. What will happen to them? What would be their demise? This is similar to the issue of qada hajj, going to relieve yourself. What would happen if Allah made us where you have no relief system, no button, no switch, and you just eat, drink, and nothing ever comes out, everything goes in? This will be a catastrophe. So Allah made them where they have this as it relates to the procreation system, the ovaries and the eggs, and all of the stuff that, subhanAllah, some ulama, they said whenever you think about making zina with a lady who's a non-Muslim, they said that think about she doesn't make it stingy. Think about the blood and the filth, and subhanAllah, to make you say ew. Although some people sick mind, they might say, oh wow. But the Muslim's supposed to have purification, tahara, love for cleanliness. So all of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly establishes there's a difference between the two sexes, a great difference. Even you look in the story of Maryam, the mother of Isa, and how, she carried the baby, as a miracle. But again, no man is made to carry a baby as a miracle or no miracle. So this shows you the two are different. Allah wa ta'ala also mentioned the Quran, the role of the man. The role of the man when it comes to the woman. And Allah wa ta'ala said, بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ, because Allah has favored or given one something He hasn't given the other. Then Allah said, وَبِمَا أَنْفِقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, because what those men spend on those women from their sustenance. So again, Allah shows you the women, wallahi, the best woman, the one who has the most money, the most estate, with all of her kindness. It's difficult for a lady to just spend on a man. Any of you ever had a woman spend on you? I know some ex-pimps and gigolos in here, gangsters. Allah musta'an. Don't expose yourself. But I mean, for real. Like some brothers, I remember when we were coming up in Jahiliyyah, some of the guys, that was their thing. You have like these different women, and each one of them have, some kind of source of money, whether it be job or, back then you get a welfare check. You get a real paper check in the mail. Anybody remember that? And you bust that check, you take the paper to the check cashing place or to the bank, you sign it, you give it to them, and you get your money. Now they have plastic cards and all of this stuff. But, this guy was priding the fact that he had these women, because they would every, beginning of the month, break him off some money, so he has this money, he has a fly pair of sneakers, we call them back home, and the little tennis shoes, you know what I'm saying? He's got a nice
suit on, he looking fly, he ain't pay for nothing. The women pay for everything. Allah Mustar. But, those women did that because either they were conditioned, they were raised like that, they wanted to keep the man, they felt a sense of insecurity or whatever. But in normal circumstance, women don't just spend on the man. Even if she has more money, even if she has affluency, he doesn't. She expects him to do something because that's the nature. And that's why Allah said, because they spend, because of what they spend, what they have from what they have on the women. So all of this shows you that the sexes are different. And that is the beginning of relationships. We need to understand that females are different from men. In a very special way. Prophet Sallam described women as like crystals. Crystals. Anybody ever seen a crystal?
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if you drop a crystal on the ground?
Shatter.
Subhanallah. And one piece or many pieces?
Many
pieces, yeah. The Prophet described women like that. Now, so this is the beginning of relationships, understanding, and this is probably why we have so much failure in relationships, because nobody taught us that coming up. We watch TV and movies and this, and then, if there was a father in the house, what we seen from him, if any. And then, you had the women folks, with the whole welfare system. And if you want this, money to take care of your kids, then you can't have the man in the house. So he's out the house. And when he's in, he's hiding. And his shoes and clothes can't be under the bed. I remember. Used to have to hide my stepfather's clothes because they would come and check. They would come and check. The government would come, check to make sure there's no man in the house. So they're checking, see if there's any shoes under the bed, any Stacey Adams, any Florshams, any suit coats. Yeah. And if they found it, khalas, they're going to cut your money. Straight up, I remember. Because this was the real deal in the 70s, in the 80s, and some might say in the late 60s. So the point is that when you talk about the beginning of this whole issue of relationships, whether it's, again, as a couple, husband and wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, neighbors, on the job, at school, in the workplace, in the masjid, whatever, you got to understand the chemistry between the two. The nature between the two is different. That's the beginning of how the Prophet ﷺ was able to deal the way he was with his family, with his wives, with his daughters, with the community, because he understood that. So understanding that, moving forward, then, there's some things that, when we talk about relationships, that sometimes we miss because of the lack of education. And one of them is, what is the role, of the male versus the female? What is the role? And if we talk about, in general, most of the time, it seems to play out as women being looked at most of the time as just sex objects. What they have as an intellect, what they have as a personality, what they have of good traits is normally overlooked. But the thing that is the key is what's internal. Because the Prophet, he mentioned this when he talked about marriage. He said, pick the lady who has the deen, you will be successful. But in that same hadith, he mentioned Jamalaha, her beauty, walihisabiha, her lineage, walimaliha, and her wealth. Then he mentioned, pick the one with the deen who will be successful. But what does this mean, though? Because today, deen could mean to somebody Muslim by name. Deen can mean to somebody she wears a face veil niqab. Deen can mean she comes from a Muslim background or Muslim family. Deen can mean, that person has some type of degree from an Islamic university. Or what do we mean when we say deen from that hadith? Yusuf.
Assalamu alaikum.
It's a follower of the Quran and Sunnah.
Oh,
Practicing Muslim. Not just,
SubhanAllah, he's high power. He said, follower of the Quran and Sunnah.
Deen
SubhanAllah.
just mean religion. Although that's the minhaj.
I said Yusuf.
Oh, my bad.
That's okay. I know you holding big
Come on,
shake.
I'm just being nosy.
That's all right. That's all right. You in the house though, Allah Akbar. What do we mean when we say deen, Abdul Rashid? From that
I
hadith.
always thought it means just simple the deen.
The deen.
Deen.
Okay. Now, that is what the
deen
Prophet
of
said,
Islam.
right?
I want to get it clear, the deen of
Yeah,
Islam.
the Prophet, he said the deen. What somebody else? What do you think the Prophet meant by that? Because the ulama explained. Because deen is general. Deen can mean actions. Malik Yawm ad-Din. Everybody know that ayah? Please don't say what ayah. So the Fatiha. Malik Yawm ad-Din. What does deen mean in this ayah? The Lord of the religion? No, it means the Lord of the deeds that you do. He's going to pay you back. So, deen here means your recompense. What Allah is going to give you for what you did. This is the meaning of deen in this ayah. This day I perfected your deen. Allah is not talking about your actions. Now He's talking about the legislation. The way you should live, the Sharia. The do's and don'ts. The things that's beneficial for the society. The 5 daily prayer. The fasting in Ramadan. Someone covering their private parts in front of people that it should be covered in front of. And so forth. So when the Prophet said marry the one with the deen, this is inclusive. It means they're Muslim. Also mean that they have some level of chastity. They're not running to and from this man, that man, this man. Also means they have afaf. Chastity afaf means that they're not promiscuous. It also means that these people that have some hayat, some tact about themselves, They won't say and do any particular thing that's lewd. Also means that this person prays. Very important. As most people today, they don't pray. Most of the Muslims, wallahi, and Allahu alam, most of the Muslims don't pray today. You say, how does Shaikh can say that? And he's blind. Well, I have not been blind all my life. Only for a small portion of time. And to my knowledge, you can go to many Muslim countries. Everybody's Muslim. Why is the masjid empty? At Salat time, in the Muslim country, they pray in the masjid. They don't pray in the house like we do, at the job like we do. In the Muslim countries, the custom is you go pray in the masjid. So if you go to the masjid and the masajid is empty, you think people posted up in their house praying Jama'ah? No. You go look out in the streets, and nobody in the soccer fields praying. You go to the jobs, the people ain't praying. So what that mean? Most people are not what? Praying. SubhanAllah, may Allah help us. So this is inclusive when we talk about relationships. The one picking the one with the deen. The Prophet mentioned that. But unfortunately, if we fast forward to this time we live in, this is a problem. Because people know what to say. And we're now talking about the brothers. The brothers, mashallah, he have a nice beard, and somebody, a lady who's trying to be upright, she don't want somebody who, he's a thug or, he's a street person. She wants somebody who prays and has some, piety. So the guy has a beard, nice kufi, if she, talks with them or the family talks with them, he presents himself like, wow, a real righteous person. He may have on, white thobe, kufi. You say, oh wow, he's really, religious, Same thing with the women. You don't know. Lady, she have on a nice abaya. You say, man, I like that. She wearing that thing. She have on a niqab, she blink her eye. You say, oh, that's it. But is that it for us? Just the clothing? No. But a lot of times it's just, unfortunately, what you see. That's it. There's nothing too much after that, you know. And so when the prophet said marry the one for the deen, then in these times, sometimes the one who's portraying the deen is the worst one, unfortunately. It's sad to say, but that's the reality. And we hear it all the time, or I should say most of the time, from the women. That the brother, you know, claim he's on the Quran and Sunnah, and, you know, Allah Musta'an, he's smoking crack. And we're not talking about he took one night of crack and he made Toba. I mean, this guy been smoking crack for 5 years. And a 7-8 year relationship. Or 10 years. And he's been with that person for 11 years. Yeah. Doesn't look like he's trying to stop. He doesn't have control over that at all. You know. Or, Allah Musta'an, he's beating the lady. And we're not talking about getting into an argument. He loses his cool, he smacks her. Or he pushes her. We're talking about like physically, like a man fight a woman, you know, beat her down, throw her down the steps, kick her in the stomach, her 2 eyes big, you know, her lip busted. She gotta wear a niqab now, because if she just go out with her face, everybody can say, wow, what happened? Who did that to you? Your husband, right? But this is the one that portrays the deen. Allah Musta'an. And we find the same complaint from the men, a lot of the women, Allah Musta'an. There's no disrespect, but, you know, the woman is not religious, you know. And there is a certain code of ethics, you know what I'm saying? And people do as they, you know, do, but, I mean, wallahi, a woman has to be, you know, chaste. She can't be, you know, with this one and that one. You know, she can't be lewd, and, you know, she can't be, you know, flirtatious, and you don't know where she is. She didn't come home last night, and you see her 2 days later. Allah Musta'an. Many stories. SubhanAllah. And what do you think this is going to do? What is it going to, you know, become? What is it going to end up being? You know, so when Prophet ﷺ mentioned this issue, picking the lady with the deen, he also mentioned for the lady, if she sees someone that she likes his character, she likes his deen, that she should marry that man. Don't turn him away. If she turn him away, the Prophet says it's going to be fasad fil ard, meaning the man is going to be forced to go in other directions, because the man has to have a woman. Just like a woman has to have a man, despite what the critics say. This is how Allah made it. So have a good brother, you know, mashallah, he's, you know, trying to do the right thing. You reject him, you reject him, you reject him. Eventually, subhanAllah, he's going to stay single the rest of his life, or he's going to find somebody else with patience, or he's going to dip and dab, dip and dab, dip and dab. So the Prophet, when he mentioned these terms about deen, these are realities, but sometimes it's not our reality. So in the relationship, it's difficult now because we don't know what to look for. We don't know, you know, what to choose, you know. So this is one of the main things we have to be straight up when we talk about relationships, you know, what it is that we're looking for, you know, what are we trying to get out of the relationship? What are some of the goals, short-term, long-term goals, you know, what do we have in common, you know, and you know, how can we enhance one another's lives, you know, because this is the purpose of the relationship, you know, to grow the ummah, to make any righteous children, to make a solid Muslim community. And if we have dysfunctional households, if we have unstable relationships, if we don't know what is the basis of the relationship, then how can we achieve the bigger picture? How can we? So this, the Prophet, he mentioned these things for a reason. And alhamdulillah, they're here to stay for one who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he or she takes that to be the case, that this is really something that has to be tangible, somebody's deen, you know, and not just talking and not just words and not just clothing. They can achieve what the Prophet ﷺ wanted us and what he expected for us to achieve in relationships. Also, when we talk about the issue of before you get in a relationship, we're talking again couples and marriage. This is very important. most of the time we find, Allah Musta'an, most of the time, or I'm going to say a lot of the times, we find people starting off on the wrong foot. Starting off on the wrong foot. And in relationships, wallahi, they say you reap what you. Yeah. So this is very, very important. And wallahi, I know stories, the marriage was horrible, but that brother had sex with the lady before he married her. And things happen. But where's the tawbah? You have to feel bad about it. You have to repent. You have to not go back to it. So that brother may get out of that relationship. Then there's another lady he's interested in. He slides her a number. She slides him a number. The same thing over and over again. And you can see like the turnover rate. Like, why this brother's been married so many times. Why this sister been married so many times. Well, perhaps it's because the way they're going about it in the beginning. There's not going to be any barakat in something that is haram. We have a tendency to think that if you do something in the wrong way, then you can fix it. You can halalify it. You can make it okay. No, it has to be okay from the beginning. So this is another critical point in relationships when you talk about how it starts out. Also, subhanAllah, the issue of patience. The issue of patience, because in this day and time, our patience is very short. The type of life that we live and the environment, and it doesn't help that, subhanAllah, now we're in an economical crisis called pandemic and all of these things. But the reality is patience is short. And what the Shaikh mentioned last night, Shaykh Yusuf, may Allah bless him, the issue of, loving one another. It's a big issue. It seems in relationships too often we find a way to have hostilities. We find a way to fault find. We find a way to wage war rather than to look for the good things, rather than to make things peaceful, rather than to meet one another halfway. And this is a problem in the relationship when we talk about living in the same space, whether you're a husband, wife, or parents and children or siblings. Imagine how it's going to be in a relationship with somebody and it's constant hostility, constant fault finding, constant, waging war. SubhanAllah. So this is another thing, critical thing in the relationship, the patience, and having love. And we know that, people have learned how and what it means to love in different ways. I remember when my mother was alive, we had a conversation one time, and, she said she wasn't taught how to love somebody. Her mom and her father never told her, we love you. So she said that's why she never told us coming up that she loved us. And it was, she's in her, during this time, I have to say, maybe late 50s, almost 60 when she told me that, And of course, at that time, she began to say, love you, and, you kiss your mom on the forehead, and, you do things for her, and that develops. But just having that family talk, she was just straight, So, people have different ways of showing love. People have different definitions of love. But the most important thing is people have to learn to allow people to love them the way that they need to be loved. The way that someone needs you to love them, your job, you have to learn to love them like that. And the same way that they want to be loved. You may not be accustomed to that, but you have to learn how to love them the way that they feel loved. And this is important in relationships. The Prophet he used to say, many hadith, if you love a person, tell that person I love you. But today, wallahi, you hear so many brothers who tell his wife, I love you for the sake of Allah. And it was a big argument. Because she said, what? All the damn stuff I do for you, you tell me you love me for the sake of Allah? She was crushed because, you know, this love that the prophet is talking about, if you love somebody, tell them that you love them. This is a genuine love. This has nothing to do with because you're a Muslim, because you pray, because, you know, mashallah, you fast, you know, I love you because, you know, Allah loves you because you're a Muslim and the things you know. That's a separate type of love. Loving somebody because who they are for them, that's what the prophet is talking about. Nothing spooky. And especially in a relationship where you sleep next to somebody every night. Yeah. You share the same quarters. I hope you do. Your brother sleeping on the bench and the wife is sleeping in the bed, it's a problem. Park bench and that. You know, it's a problem. In the winter time, it's a problem. Bad enough to sleep on the couch. At least you're in the house, though, mashallah. But I mean, real talk, I mean, you know, how is that? You know, that, you know, you can have this type of mentality and, you know, it's almost like a superficial type religious plane, you know, love you for Allah's sake. That's your wife. SubhanAllah. Salam used to tell Aisha that he loved her. You know, no one was more beloved, yani, to him than Aisha. Everybody knew it. It's all in the hadith. You know, SubhanAllah. One time she got jealous at Khadijah because he was talking about Khadijah. And he said, you know, she was with me when nobody believed in me. And she, you know, is the woman that supported me. And I didn't have any children by any other woman than that woman. You think he was talking about he loved her for the sake of Allah? SubhanAllah. So when we talk about the relationship between spouses, moreover, husband and wife, this has to be understood because there's a connection there when you love somebody for who they are, you know, their personality, you know, what they bring to the table. And there's a disconnect if you can't seem to find that type of love. If everything is because, you know, the sake of Allah, and some people will say, well, it's better to love for the sake of Allah because you love in moderation. You never know you have to hate somebody. You never know somebody hates your love. That's a true statement, by the way, from some of the righteous predecessors. But let's put it in its proper context. That's all the way across the board. Whether you love somebody for Allah's sake, because Allah loves them as a believer or not. That's just, you know, how it, you know, is. You never know. You know, but that has nothing to do with the genuine love that's deserving in a relationship. Has nothing to do with that. And then when we talk about the issue of divorce, Allah musta'an. Wallahi, this divorce it's, I mean, brothers here that's been married and divorced and, you know, they have children and grandchildren and sisters, they know. The divorce it's unexplainable, the damage that the divorce does. And, I mean, when we see reports of how the children turn out dysfunctional as it may be in a house where the parents stay together and they don't kill one another versus the parents who split in a functional relationship. You say, wow, are you serious? Yeah, it's difficult, but that's the reality. It does something to the kids when the mother and the father, you know, split apart like that. And you know, so you'll find many people just hanging in there until the kids get grown. And somebody might say, well, I'm not staying in no relationship for no kids, but guess what? You know, this is why we probably have so much mental illness, because divorce is so high. And people say, you know, I'm not going to stay in here for my kids. I'm out of here. But the kids are, you know, damaged forever, unrepairable. And then that person's going to carry that trauma to their relationship. And that person's going to carry that, and it's a cycle. You know, so this is another thing about relationships. We should, you know, be mindful of learning, you know, the coping mechanisms and the value of the relationship, you know, how to and why a person should stay in a relationship. Because sometimes people get out and they should stay in, and sometimes they stay in and they should get out. But we don't understand the value of the relationship. You don't understand the value of the relationship. You know. The last 2 points has to do with how a person picks their mate. How the person picks their mate. And this is very important because a lot of times we've seen this as well in relationships. The person is picked for a reason that's not what we would call legitimate. You know, it's not because what they have in common or what they, you know, have as a goal. You know, it's, you know, that person just wants to get married. Those the brothers say, man, it's difficult. I'm trying to save myself from zina. But if someone gave us fasting, you don't have to just jump in a relationship because you're afraid you're going to fall in adultery and fornication. And the sister, sometimes the brother is told, listen, man, don't marry that woman. I'm telling you, that woman is hell. So, nah, man, she's a good sister. So, actually, I'm telling you, that woman's a shaitan. Man, I don't care what you say. I got to have that. And 3 days later, the phone is ringing. You know, all hell broke loose. But someone tried to tell him. You know, but again, you choosing the mate for the wrong reason. And this happens a lot of times. And it'll play out, you know, in the relationship. It'll play out if you don't choose that person for the right reason. And sometimes, like a person accepts Islam and they're not really serious about the religion, but then Allah changes their heart. That can happen in a relationship. You know, you get in it for the wrong reason, but then Allah changes your heart. You know, and you know it becomes something good. But we're talking about going in. This is why we have a lot of problems, because people choose the mates for the wrong reason. You know, for the wrong reason. Another thing, the issue of the sexual relationship. And Shaikh Yusuf, he pointed on this touch base last night about depression. You know, it's not always that that person don't love Allah and His messenger because they're not praying, or that they may slack in prayer. You know, it's not always that person, you know, has a jinn in them. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But a lot of times, if you understand the whole science of depression, sometimes it just takes all that you have, all of your strength, to the point you can't get out of bed. How you going to pray if you can't get out of bed? How you going to make wudu if you can't get out of bed? How you going to pray if you don't have an appetite to eat? And we're talking about for days, sometimes for weeks. You know, depending on what that person is going through. So, you know, when you talk about the issue of sexual relations in the relationship, this is another issue, because sometimes there's something going on with that person. You know, women, a lot of times, you know, they worry about how they look. You know, they're getting older, or they're gaining weight, or they might have, you know, issues with hormones, or, you know, maybe they had, you know, a few babies and they gained weight or whatever. This is enough to, you know, make the lady depressed, you know. And that can take the sex drive and throw it right out the window, you know. For men, sometimes the brothers, and somebody asked me this a couple of days ago, you know, about erection. Sometimes people have, you know, erectile dysfunction. They have to go to the doctor. Have, you know, they need some type of medication, or, you know, something that happened to them, you know, in their life that it affects that part of, you know, their body and their sexual drive. But a lot of times, subhanAllah, and I remember the issue of lowering the gaze. This is a real issue. And you guys live in a society. Every time you look up, you're seeing something. You know, the brother, he told me, he said, man, subhanAllah, some of these women out here, you know, you think they're grown women that like 14, 15, the way every time you look up, you know, you're seeing something. Yeah, a man has to lower his gaze. You know, and I told one brother, he asked me, I said, yeah, you know, he asked me this, you know, question. Yeah, you have to lower your gaze. This includes, on websites, magazines, porn is a big thing. And let's not act like the Muslims don't watch porn. It's a big problem all over the world. Even they were talking about children. They said most children get their sex education not from the parents, not from the school, not from proper education. Most children get their sex education, the birds and the bees, they said, from porn. You believe that? SubhanAllah. So imagine the more a person, and they mentioned this too, the effects of pornography, that, it makes you not want your wife. So of course, if a person's watching porn all the time, he's not going to be so, interested in his wife. If he's looking all over the place, every woman he sees, he's got to look, he doesn't lower the gaze, he desires, it's going to kill that sexual part of the relationship, perhaps, with the other mate. And sometimes it happens with women too. Let's not think it don't. What you see the movies, the videos, the this, the that. Look at you, it's not that tasteful because of what the eyes see and what the eyes desire. So these are just some of the issues when we talk about dealing, coping, and understanding the value of relationships. And there's a lot more that could be mentioned and said, but I hope that this is enough for people to reflect, to take a time out, sit by yourself, reflect, because the issue of relationships is very important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his prophet, he mentioned in conclusion that there's no two people. He was talking about relationship. There's no two people. Allah brings them together and separates them except because of one of the sins of that couple. And Allah Azza wa Jal don't bring, because it's Allah who brings you together. It's Allah who puts it in your heart and that person's heart to be together. Allah Ta'ala mentioned that in the Quran. Many places, And the Prophet is clearly saying no two people that love one another. He's talking about in a relationship. This could be general, but he's talking about in a relationship. No two people that love one another go apart, separate, break up, except because of the sins of one of those two. And maybe sometimes it's the sins of both of them, depending. You know what I'm saying? But the Prophet is mentioning this in light of someone need to check themselves. You see what I'm saying? Someone is being wronged in the affair. Someone is being oppressed greatly to the point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to remove the barakah from that situation. And the Prophet he used to mention when people get married, barakallahu lak wa baraka alayk wa jama bainakum fi khair, that may Allah bless you and bless you in what you have engaged upon, that is the union of the marriage, and bring the two of you together in goodness. And then you see people going east and west, divorce and separation, hatred, fighting, and taking this to the grave, and then you're going to stand before Allah Azza wa Jalla on the day of judgment. So we ask Allah, the Almighty, to help us to understand the value of relationships and to be more diligent when it comes to building relationships, maintaining relationships, repairing relationships. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cleanse our hearts, our minds, and our souls from all of the distractions and the things that take away the blessings that He has given us in relationships. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve our religion that we have to live and worship Him by, and to protect and preserve our worldly life that we have to live in order to get to the hereafter. Of course, I left out a lot. I didn't talk about relationships in the masjid, and that's for another time, inshallah. Any questions and answers on the topic?
I have one question. Assalamu alaikum. My brother Rashid, you mentioned something I found profound, because I'm looking at the reality of my situation. Choosing the right mate. and this is where I felt victim at, for the wrong reason. I'm starting to, as time goes on, I'm learning that me and the individual that I got married to, who had my daughter, she started teaching her things now about Tataku, which I am totally against. She's teaching her now about Christianity. At the beginning, I made it clear to her, I am Muslim. My deen is al-Islam. I believe in the Tawheed of Allah. And I taught, I educated her about the deen. But that was not my intentions why I married her. But the bottom line is this. Because I felt that I definitely had made the wrong choice for the wrong reason. I selected a mate for the wrong reason. All right. I'm trying to get some clarification on some nasiha now. How do I try to convince this broad? How do I convince her Islam and not the Taghut's way?
Okay, well, the first thing I want to say, it's okay if you want to call her, but I don't think you should call her that if she's still your wife in front of the people and you're on the internet as well. So don't call her broad, because in Jahiliyyah, broad is like calling her BITC, you know what.
All right.
So, as it relates to this issue, the first thing is that we should say, as you mentioned, this is a mistake, because many brothers, they do this. That is, they marry somebody that's a non-Muslim. And sometimes they say, well, that person's from the people of the book, and they're not from the people of the book. They're just American. Just because they're American don't mean they're a Christian or a Jew. That's the meaning of the people of the book. And another shade, sometimes they are a Christian, a Jew, but Al-Tabarak wa Ta'ala, he allowed this in the Quran. In Surah Al-Ma'idah. And Umar, he used to say, there's nothing more despised after shirk to me than someone marrying a person of shirk. And you will say, well, wait a minute, Allah allowed, how can Umar say that? Well, we asked the ulama this question. They said, because when you marry somebody who's from the Jews and Christians and you're a Muslim, you're already putting the children in a precarious situation. They said, because now the children, they're at the risk of being confused. The father's a Muslim, the mother's a Christian. They're having the Ramadan, and then we're having Christmas. We're having Easter, and we're having Eid al-Ahad. So this is why Umar ibn al-Khattab made that statement, despising, although Allah made it mubah, it's okay, Umar detested it because there's going to be some level of confusion in most cases. The second thing is that for future references, people should try to marry the Muslim first. They have more right, the ulama said. You know what I'm saying? And this is one way to solve the problem, if you're talking about religious differences, if that person is a Muslim. As it relates to that person that you're talking about, Allah only knows best how you can win that person over or get them to see that Islam is the right way, and Allah, what a challenge. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us and rectify our affairs. Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows best. Jazakumullah khair. Anybody else?
Well, what, can you maybe go in for a minute on some of the importance of the relationship of the parents and children?
Some of the important aspects of the relationship between the parents and the children. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala said, "Inna min azwajikum wa awladikum aduwwun lakum fahdharuhum." Verily, from amongst some of your wives and your children, they are enemy to you. The scholars, they said, enemy here doesn't mean like somebody's trying to kill you and you gotta defend yourself. They said here, enemy means distraction. as Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentioned the other ayat, لا تلهكم أموالكم ولا أولادكم عن ذكر الله. Don't let your wealth and your children pull you from the remembrance of Allah. So sometimes this is one of the biggest challenges with parents and children, especially in this time, that the children, because you love them so much, the children, because you feel like I want to give them more than what I had, the children, because you say, I felt I was deprived and didn't have, I don't want them to go through that. The children, because you don't want to disappoint them, you just give them. And sometimes what you're giving them, it's haram. You know it's going to lead to a bigger problem. But because you love them so much, you overlook that. So that's one of the biggest things as a parent that I would say from the book of Allah, this message, to not let them be a distraction for you. At the same time, don't be a person who is extreme and what people will say, harsh and, not understanding and not trying to understand where they're coming from. But, you have to be the parent. You can't be the child and they're the parent. You got to be the parent, they're the child. And I remember coming up, it doesn't make a difference if you were 50 and your mom was 70. That's your mother. You couldn't say, well, listen, I'm grown. Who you talking to? Listen, at 70 years old, she going to hit you with something. You'll be getting up off the ground trying to say, where my tooth at? Mm-hmm. That wasn't played, you see. But today, the role is switched. The parents sometimes are being ran over by the children, and the children are taking control of the parents. So that's one of the main things the parent has to know. Don't let the children distract them from their responsibility. Don't let the children pull you from your ability to obey Allah. Don't let the children run you and be your parent. You are the parent. Now, also, you should understand the children are growing up in a different time than we are. And many people say, I wouldn't want to be, a youth today. It's a challenge. They got everything coming at them from all directions. Even sometimes they say the Islamic school is just as bad as the public school. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Yeah, because the environments that we live in. Remember, the device, everything is at the tip at the touch of a finger. SubhanAllah. You know what the girl doing in the Islamic school talking about, I want to have a baby by Snoop Doggy Dogg. She's a junior in a Muslim school with straight A's. Saying that at the locker, twerking. Allah Musta'an. This is the effect that we're dealing with. And we're talking about not parents that are slacking, some parents on top of their game, but it's just something that we're dealing with. Environment, So this is advice, for the parents. Don't let the children distract you from the remembrance of Allah, from being a parent, doing the right thing. Don't let them run you and be the parent. You are the parent.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, what you ended there with is, what are the most important to maybe less important steps in terms of educating your children in terms of the behavior?
The most important, it's difficult again because the environments are what we're living in. It's the environments. I mean, for the parent, then that parent has to set the example. And still, it's up to Allah if He's going to guide that kid or let that kid go astray with his or her desires. But as a parent, you got to set the example. You have to, have good etiquette. You have to pray. You have to be hardworking. You have to do things to inspire the children. But sometimes the children, unfortunately, are uninspirable because the environment. They want something and you want something. You going one way, they going another way. Mm-hmm. But perhaps if you set the example, then inshallah they'll have a better opportunity. And at most, Allah won't ask you in the day of judgment why you didn't do your part. Because as a parent, you got to do your part. There's no guarantee. You have some prophet, but his family members kuffar. You have some kuffar, but from the kuffar came a prophet. So this is from the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, look at Lut and his wife was kafir and he was a prophet. You know what I'm saying? Look at Fir'aun. He was tagha, kuffar, kafir, you know, dhalim. But his wife was, you know, a lady who said, oh Allah, build me a house, not in Jannah, build me a house with you in the Jannah. You gonna do with that? You know, so Allah make it easy. Allah make it easy. Allahu a'lam. وصلى الله وسلم back on نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Thursday from 8, 10, 7:30 is Salat al-Isha. We're going to do the 20-something ways to the Jannah. That's on the 24th. They like to call it Christmas Eve. Yeah. Yeah, so inshallah, don't forget.
I'm joking.
Inshallah.
Finish. Finish.